Okay, hi and welcome everybody. My name is Jennryn Wetzler and I'm the Director of Learning and Training at Creative Commons, and I am delighted to have the chance to introduce our speakers today for our open education platform lightning talks that community members present. So thank you all so much for joining, and a special thanks to our speakers for being willing to condense some of their knowledge into 7 short minutes for you. So they will present for 7 minutes. You will then have about 2 to 3 minutes to ask questions, and then we will move on to the next presentation. So it's a very fast turnaround between our presentations. We'll be talking about using OER as tools for social justice, looking at work-life balance with open education, looking at climate change and the the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We'll look at different platforms such as LibreTexts and Curationist, and really look forward to your engagement in these different topic areas. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first 2 speakers joining us to talk about reimagining open education as social justice. So Ruffin is the Educational Programs Manager at MHC Foundation. Ruffin is also CEO and co-founder of the creative studio and arts incubator, Brown Art Inc. Joining her is Amanda Figueroa, who is the community director at MHC Foundation. Figueroa is also the co-founder of Brown Art Inc. They are fantastic collaborators. I love working with them, and their incredible platform, Curationist, which we're about to hear a little bit more in a moment. So thank you both so much for joining us. Now I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennryn. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Everybody seeing that okay?
Yep. Wonderful. Yep, looks great.
All right, as it's been mentioned, my name is Ruffin. I'm Educational Programs Manager at Curationist. I'm joined by Amanda, our Community Director. Amanda, do you want to say hello?
Always. Good morning, everybody.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
I'm just pulling up my notes because, like any good presenter, I did not time myself. But I actually want to have more space for questions and be in conversation with you all. But to go ahead and jump right on in, first of all, what is Curationist? Great question. So we are a search platform that is free and accessible to users like you. And we bring together arts and culture around the world. And so we have a collection of around, oh, sorry, just making sure you can hear me. We have a collection of about 4.4 million cultural artifacts that are being pulled in from such institutions as the Met and Brooklyn Museum. And so what this means is that we've made a highly complex search engine that is pulling from the open access collections of these large institutions and making it accessible through this one search engine. And what Curationist is looking forward to becoming is a space in which communities are able to come in and support repair around the metadata. And so you can actually go in and create your own profile, create your own collections, and have opportunity to start to recontextualize these collections. There's always a problem. There we go. So as part of our mission is to advance opportunity for open educational resources. And so we actually have 2 calls open at the moment. First, our Critics of Color, which I'll go into in more detail, is a residency funded by Critical Minded. And then we also have a fellowship that invites scholars, librarians, both whether institutional or not, community researchers and students to be a part of how we start to envision the possibilities for Curationist as an open educational platform. So a little detail around Critics of Color. So this is a residency program, 6 months. And so we're inviting critics from around the world who identify as a person of color to research and to write and contribute to the educational features on our site. And so this is a really great opportunity for emerging and seasoned writers to have an opportunity to work very closely with our editorial content team who are very passionate and expert in how we start to surface some of these archival artifacts and start to build collections and contextualize around these objects more critically. And so the Critics of Color residency, like I said, is a 6-month opportunity to really go deep into the platform, understand the metadata, because the writers who join us have an opportunity to start to rethink the metadata for the images and the stories that they tell through our platform. And then to go into a little bit of detail around Curationist Fellowship Program. So again, like I mentioned, this is open to 4 tracks of folks. So we have our graduate fellows, our faculty fellows, our community research fellows, and our librarian fellows. And so within all these respective tracks, we're really excited about offering an opportunity for each of these categories to really go deep within their fields around what is possible for open education, open educational resources through their work. And so we're inviting fellows to come with their research interests, but also, again, to be thinking within their field. And so as a graduate fellow, what resources are lacking in the spaces that they exist in, again, as fellows or as faculty, as community researchers. And so we also have folks who are already applying and saying, like, I do work at an institution, but I do this really interesting project outside of my institution. And so we welcome that as well. And we want to support you thriving in your independent research efforts as well, to create resources that can exist on Curationist or beyond. So these calls actually did close yesterday, but we are so excited to be a part of this group and conversation. And so if you want to send us an email here, you are welcome to let us know that you were part of this conversation. Maybe just put CC Open Ed in the subject line or in the body of the email, and let us know that you heard this conversation or were part of this conversation, and you'd love to be considered for either the fellowship or the residency, and we'd love to consider you. So from there, I'd love to open it up for questions about either of the programs or the platform.
Thank you so much. That was great. I was timing you, and you were true to your word. You have plenty of extra time for questions.
Great.
So well done. It looks like you already have interest in the chat. I know a couple participants have already said that they're interested in the fellowship. So hopefully they will follow suit and email you afterward. Anyone want to unmute their microphone and ask a question live?
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question, really. And yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting project. And I'm here part of a doctoral program in science math education at a historically Black college and university. And I am really interested in, getting my student here involved, if that is possible, through fellowship. That's an excellent idea. Thank you so much for a great job.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know. And I mean, a part of Curationist vision is really through a social justice lens. And so as much as we can ensure that Black and Brown and Indigenous folks are really a part of this conversation is really at the forefront of how we're thinking about this platform.
Absolutely. I will get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, keep an eye out for you specifically.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And I see we have a question from Suzanne in the audience who asks, is there a website for where we can search for the images on the site? Curationist.org.
So I just dropped it in the chat, but curationist.org is our searchable platform. And then, as I mentioned, you're also able to create your own profile, start creating your own collections. So we're really encouraging people to get in there, start creating collections, because this is about people. It's not about the collections themselves. And so that's how we move these narratives and expand them, right? And so making sure that folks are really getting in there. But we know this community knows that. So please come with your ideas and your curiosity for sure.
I will also say, also on our website right now, there's a section called editorial features where you can see some of the work that was created by fellows and critics from iterations of the program past. That might give you some good understanding of the sort of work that you'll generate in that realm. Although, of course, there are other opportunities to work with us, conferences, public programs, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna unshare. Hopefully everybody caught the email, but we can also put that in the chat if we haven't yet.
You're getting a lot of great messages in the chat. So thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for the questions. We will now turn to our second speaker. So next up is actually Delmar Larson, who is going to give the next two presentations. Delmar will present on LibreTexts 101, Building the Textbook of the Future, and then on using machine translation algorithms to effectively generate non-English language OER textbooks. So we are delighted to have Delmar. He is, as some recent California Community College bootcamp participants noted, everywhere in office hours, online, always available for people to understand more about LibreTexts and the latest. So we're really delighted to have him join us here today. Delmar Larson is the professor of chemistry at the University of California, Davis, and the founder and director of the LibreTexts project. So Delmar, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much. I also didn't time this, but I have a lot more slides, so I'm going to try to speed along, and I apologize if it appears that I'm on amphetamines. Okay, let me start off here. The first thing I'll mention is the LibreTexts project, which is the first presentation I'm doing here, is celebrating our 15th year anniversary, or birthday, that is, our Jubilee, next month. So we're going to be discussing this a bit in our presentations for Open Ed Week. That will be Friday. So let me start with the mission statement. The LibreTexts project is implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of OER that's comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. So each of these words that are bolded are particularly important in order to define how we proceed and our goals, as is everything that's involved in these parentheses, the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption. And that in itself, in addition to the fact that we are faculty using and building OER in the classroom, gives us a very practitioner-oriented perspective on things out there. So the LibreTexts name is the name that we used for our entire project, but the actual platform we have is an ecosystem of multiple technologies that we refer to as the LibreVerse. And I'm going to be talking about it.
Sorry, 1 second. Were you intending to screen share? I should have asked from the start. I'm so sorry.
It should be. I pressed the button. I did not press the button. Yes, I was intending to screen share. There were several slides that were missing there. So I will just go through this and hope that I went across. So let me just start again with the LibreVerse. So the LibreVerse is the ecosystem that we've been building over the last 15 years of interconnected technologies in order to empower OER in the classroom. And as I mentioned before, we're not just building the technologies and disseminating, we're using them both in our classroom in adoption efforts and also in building of OER efforts. So I want to talk about three of the components of the LibreVerse today. One is the core libraries. That's the hub of the LibreVerse, which is a set of interconnected wikis. And then two projects. One is the Adapt homework system that we've been working on quite aggressively the last couple of years, and the Commons and Conductor that we released also last year. And all these things are open source, at least the technologies that we created. And don't capitalize. If you're unfamiliar with the LibreTexts in general, we're the largest centralized library or corpus of OER content out there for textbooks. Now we're about to celebrate also our 1 billionth page view that we've delivered since we started 15 years ago. These are a little bit older statistics off of there, but we've been growing exponentially for multiple years. The core of the LibreVerse are our libraries. We have 15 interconnected libraries dealing with specific fields, or as I'll be talking about in the next slide, or the next presentation, different languages. The chemistry library is the first library that we had built because I was a chemistry professor, and the precursor name of the project was the ChemWiki, and it gives us the ability in order to host a content. We have somewhere in the order of 500,000 pages of OER content on there. What's particularly interesting from a Creative Commons perspective is that we have implemented a new auto attribution infrastructure, which gives us the ability that if you remix content on our library and copy pages or images from one page to another page, it comes with an auto attribution infrastructure. So it automatically ensures compliance with Creative Commons licensing and other open licensing subject to Creative Commons infrastructure. And we're going to be introducing new logic into our system in order to ensure that people don't implement the incorrect licensing on a page based on the content and the licensing of the content on the page. We're very excited about that. In order to facilitate remixing, we introduced several years ago the OER remixer. This recently got an award from the OpenEd Global, and it provided a simple GUI interface in order to drag pages from one part of the library into another part in order to rapidly create a book for people across the board. By having things centralized, it gave us the ability in order to facilitate that. It also gives you the ability in order to do quick searches for specific topics across the entire library, not just focusing on the metadata on a book, but metadata on a page, which is exceedingly beneficial from a centralized perspective. The Commons and Conductor is a technology that we released about a year and a half ago. It's a peculiar name, but the technology enables organizations in order to be able to have a front end, which is our Commons, and that's a catalog of infrastructure, catalog of OER that it's available for a specific campus. You can find books, access to libraries, you can build collections, you can also demonstrate homework that's relevant for organizations. And if you go to commons.libretext.org, you'll see the central Commons infrastructure that we have. It also gives you the ability in order to identify projects that are under development if the teams want to be able to show that. We have two flavors of it. One's the central Commons and the other one's a campus Commons that's included with LibreNet membership, which is our consortium, and that provides opportunity to have branding associated with that. The back end is our infrastructure for facilitating OER construction. So it's our management system that gives us the ability in order to facilitate communication and building of OER projects. It gives people the ability in order to set up alerts. So if you are interested in a specific book that's been released or topic like calculus, you can get a notification. You can introduce harvesting requests, which is our term for introducing content into our libraries. Adoption requests facilitate peer review, communications, LibreNet, and other things. The front end, this is a snapshot of the Commons that shows you the catalog. In this case here, this is for Prince George Community College, which is one of our consortium members. This is a back end OER dedicated management infrastructure that you can use, and it's freely available for anyone in the community, although it's best used within the LibreTexts infrastructure. And I encourage people in order to do that. The last thing that I have that I want to talk about is the ADAPT homework system. So it's clear that we needed to have a homework system many years ago, and we started to build this with funds from the U.S. Department of Education, with the California Education Learning Lab, the state of California, and the idea is to capitalize on existing open source technologies, all integrated together within a single infrastructure. In that approach, we've integrated WebWork, iMathAS, which is the technology underlying MyOpenMath and Lumen Learning's OHM, native technology infrastructure that's part of learning management systems, H5P, all within a single wrapper, so that when people want to master, or when instructors want to use questions, they don't need to worry about what's the nature of the technology of the questions. They can just use them productively. And then we also have open-ended question infrastructure to facilitate audio files, plain text, and such. We have different modalities on how people can utilize ADAPT, whether they want to use it directly. You can embed the questions summatively or formatively into textbooks on the LibreText. We have a new app that will be coming out in about a month and a half that students can interact directly. That's useful for using ADAPT as an in-class clicker system. And then you can embed it into learning management systems to utilize their aspect. The last thing about ADAPT is that ADAPT is named as it's named after adaptive learning. It gives us the ability in order to not just give traditional homework assignments, but to also construct learning trees, which can, you can envision it as a choose your own adventure story in order to facilitate a more customized learning experience around the questions, so that questions can be both summative and formative. And also as part of ADAPT is our Libre Studio, which is our H5P studio, our repository of H5P assessments, which is freely available for anyone to capitalize on. So I'll end with what I started, which you guys did not see, which is the mission statement. We're implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of OER that's comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. We have our hands in lots of fires, and I can certainly go into any details that people may have on this or any other parts of the LibreVerse. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, that was fantastic. And you honestly, you have an additional 5 minutes. So well done. I feel like
I was fast.
That was, yeah,
That's great.
That was great. I know we have a lot of comments in the chat space about how great it is to have the auto attribution and how useful this will be for a son focusing on science and so on. I know there's also at least one person in the audience who has a question, so maybe we'll start with some questions and see what emerges. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you. I'm curious about the peer review process, how that works. You have peer review, the peer review, how that works.
Oh, the peer review infrastructure. So the peer review infrastructure is set up within Commons. And when you have a project within Commons, which I'm going through quickly. So let's say I took this introductory project right here. You can have a peer review infrastructure and you can establish the peer review. You can hand out those reviews to your peer reviewers formally. When you actually publish the book on the library, it will have a little button that allows both students and faculty in order to provide reviews. The key component that we implement in here is we want to make sure that the reviews were curatable, because if reviews are actionable and you're able to address it, then the efficacy of that review is then heavily degraded after you've effected out. So you need to be able to curate the reviews. And this is one of the issues I have with other organizations that have reviews that have existed for a long time. It's fine if OER is not dynamic, but OER should be dynamic. So therefore the reviews should be curatable and removed if they have no longer any applicability and such. The other one that's particularly important off of here is the accessibility infrastructure. So we have a very aggressive infrastructure that right now has 20, but it'll have about 40 different criteria that's used in order to evaluate and build what's we refer to as a mini accessibility compliance review. So you can go through and identify different components off here. So it's the most sophisticated I've seen of accessibility compliance demonstrated for a specific book. And we're very happy about this because it helps to organize a large scale implementation of these criteria.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I?
Go for it.
Yeah, I want to just to take the opportunity here seriously to congratulate LibreTexts for really the award that they have received and the pioneering work. I'm happy to see that Cable is here, and I do know that I've been in this game for more than I don't know how many years, since 2000, and there are a lot of things that we strive as a community to do, and I am very, very hopeful with the project of LibreTexts. And quite frankly, the great work that is being done, seriously. You know, I was so excited that this morning, since Delmar and I are trying really to internationalize here and involving French, which I've been trying to do for more than 15 years. So I invited, as a matter of fact, somebody from the Virtual University of Senegal, because in Africa, we have a consortium of virtual universities, you know, French speaking. So, and the chancellor of the Virtual University of Senegal delegated somebody just to come and see really the lightning talk that we have here. And I think he's online. That's he's attending. That's Professor Usman Sal, really from SUP. That's what I have to say. Yeah, very, very excited.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Just a note
Excellent
to please
job,
mute your
Delmar.
microphone
Excellent.
if you're not speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mustafa.
Yeah, thank you.
And the ADAPT homework system, anyone can request an account. If you're an instructor, you can get it for free and utilize it effectively. And you can access that at adapt.libretext.org. And you will probably hear more about that in the near future as we expand. We've just gotten a $4 million grant from the from the state of California in order to massively expand ADAPT for the OER community.
This is phenomenal. So thank you so much for giving this brief overview. You have a lot of congratulatory remarks here. I think one of the ones I liked most was like the physical universe, the Libreverse is expanding. So there are a lot of really great notes here. I'm not going to read them all. Does anyone have one last question for Delmar? All right. With that, let's turn to our next speaker. So I would love to turn it over to Dr. Suma Parahakaran, who is head of the Faculty of Education at Manipul Global Next University in Malaysia. She's up very late in Malaysia right now to join us, and she serves as a visiting professor at the American University of Sovereign Nations. She was also part of a task force for training teachers. That was the timer. For training teachers to integrate values and ethics into the curriculum content for the UN Habitat Water Education Project. So thank you so much for joining us, Suma. I know you're going to present on integration of values and ethics in OER for climate change and the SDGs. Now over to you.
Hi, Jennryn. Welcome, everyone. I'm from Malaysia, and like Jennryn said, it's midnight here. So I've been working on this project for more than 4 years, just on ethics and values, especially with OER components. Let me just go ahead since we have very little time. Ethics and knowledge creation for OER itself. I've noticed that from the literature that is so extensive and which is both globally organized as well as locally experiential, especially where climate change is concerned. We have to look at both individual and discriminatory knowledge. We've heard so much of natural disasters happening now everywhere, and that is why I think this is an urgent need today. And I'm looking at the philosophers from the West and the East, and I think philosophy is a very important aspect because all our ethical frameworks come from philosophy, and this is missing in the OER where there's only content and information. So here I'm just defining individual knowledge that refers to knowledge gained for self or for sustenance, and fundamental knowledge referring to the welfare of all beings. Using knowledge for creating new systems, for example, do not take into account the philosophical challenges of computing ethics as reflected by Daryl Mesa, whose work and I followed through, and many other ethicists as well. The authorities from various fields of science and technology do not take into account the outcomes of knowledge and its applications from an ethical perspective. This is something that especially in Asia, we note that from our textbooks, the current textbooks that we have, we do not have a discussion on the ethics frameworks that could be included in the classroom, as well as in OER. So I did a study with AUSN recently, and the topic was to explore on how to integrate OER for climate change and for education. So what I did was I explored the ways, challenges, and opportunities to connect the world with climate change and technology through e-learning platforms, to show blended mode with OER materials, to digitalize tools to promote values-based awareness and skills for sustainable living. And during this past 2-3 years, I have been connecting with several organizations in Asia to network with them. And I'm also involved with the Global Education Environmental Care Center here in Malaysia, so that I can work with them and integrate content into OER as well. So this is what I see that is going to happen in the future and is presently taking over with AI and data analytics. Institutional OERs, research and experiential learning. We have to link the OERs or the content with industrial education, in the sense that experiential education on all the 3 systems, so that we have a look at our outcomes. And outcomes here I'm referring to short-term, long-term, and intermediate outcomes. This is something that we will have to do it urgently. And this, the model that I'm going to show can be used by any country, because it has been, it was formulated in New Zealand. I will show the screen much later. So this is what, there's a gap that is missing now. Tibet is for vocational, what you see on the extreme right screen is on vocational education. We have to have a connection between different industries as well as institutions. And our contents will have to be focused on systemic thinking and cross-sector services. And this will have to be enabled by AI and data analytics. When we are producing content for education, we have to integrate values and ethics as well as the technology aspect for climate change. So the educational output is more on content and the digital tools that we can add in, as well as for disseminating in different, for schools as well as for higher education. So this is what we did much earlier. In 2014, we did have our own collaboration with many schools and universities. We came out with students working online, and it was very collaborative between different teachers in Southeast Asia, as well as students from the Edmodo platform. But now the Edmodo platform is closed, and so OER looks like that's a way to go now, especially with Creative Commons being a role model. I think it's for the whole world. So this is the issue we are facing now with climate change. A report from UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that by 2030, carbon dioxide emissions caused by humans will need to fall by about 45% from 2010 levels, reaching net zero around 2050, says the report. And from analyzing large data sets or big data, we know that our planet lost the equivalent of 40 football fields per minute last year. So these statistics can be integrated into the OER with the kind of levels of developmental approaches we want to take, both for schools as well as for universities. So I'm going to skip this because this is just talking about deforestation, how we could look at the ethical implications on using social justice as one of the ethical framework. Some of the collected topics for OER and ethics and values could be on public health, policy, corporate behaviors, and industrial and consumer behaviors, as well as taxation. And the standard ethical framework we could look at is the ethical dilemmas each country is facing, and the OER content can be built around it with the principles of ethics and the impact on society as well as policy changes that should take place so that we do not face more disasters, natural disasters. An example for public health issue is the ethical framework in biomedicine. As Gillen has stated, on beneficence, non-maleficence, respect for autonomy and justice, all this can be brought into the OER content right from secondary schools. We do not have to wait for tertiary education to start looking at ethical frameworks, because I think this is quite an urgent need globally. So from my literature review that I did, these were the different aspects that I collected from various research from UN, from UNESCO, from Asia, and from all over the world. Because my work from on water and energy, I think I started this from 2004. So these are the different aspects that we could look at and integrate into our OER. Since my time is running out, I will just go to the last slide. On the left, you can see that this whole model was adapted from Saunders and Rennie in 2008. This model is excellent to be integrated into the OER system itself, because what I did was to look at more from a community growth and for capacity building in schools as well as universities. So my topic for my PhD was teaching to nurture for a sustainable environment using human values and bioethics, education for classroom and online learning. From AUSN, I've passed out just recently with this model, and this model I've added on the community component, because Saunders and Rennie had more on individual ethical thinking, but I'm also looking at group decision making for climate change. So this is all I have to share, and I want to share this model so that with schools and for universities, so that they can produce OER content relating to the issues and disasters they have in their own countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. And thank you again for being willing to join us so late in the evening in Malaysia. Does anyone have a quick question? All right, thank you. So now we are going to actually turn back to Delmar's second presentation. We have a shorter amount of time for this one, so I really, I'm going to time it and be a little bit more diligent about that this time. Delmar, thank you again for being willing to join us and present. This one is titled Using Machine Translation Algorithms to Effectively Generate Non-English Language OER Textbooks. So over to you, Delmar.
You can see the screen, right? Okay.
Yes.
This should not be surprising to people, but there are a lot of students in the world that don't speak English as their primary language or even at all. And we wanted to be able to scale up the effort of the LibreText to handle those students. So while it was originally an English-based project, we had a great desire in order to address that. So I'm going to skip over that. So we had pursued this over the last couple of years. As part of this Department of Education grant we received a few years ago, we implemented a library dedicated to Spanish as the language that was of particular importance in the US. And it was an effort in order to take the corpus that we had accumulated in English and convert it into Spanish. And that required translation efforts, human translation efforts. And that was a very slow process. Over the last few years, using predominantly students, although we had volunteer work, we built about 1,000 pages of content. What was interesting was that each of those pages in Spanish attracted 4 times higher traffic than the corresponding pages in English. So there was a strong need for Spanish versions of OER out there. So in order to try to address that at scale, we started to think about capitalizing on existing and emerging AI-based machine translation efforts. And that is where we coupled in with Amazon in order to be able to utilize these technologies in order to take the corpus of content from English and convert it into other languages. And the idea and the philosophy behind this is that while machine translation is not ideal, having 100,000 pages of 95 or 90% quality translation beats having 5 or 10 pages of human-based version of that. And then we can capitalize on the infrastructure that we have in place in order to be able to scale it up with human review afterwards. So last October, we implemented this in several different languages. One was in Spanish, and what we got is immediately after we generated these pages, we got over a 3-fold increase in our traffic and impact, which is to be expected. We built a Ukrainian library version in order to handle students that were displaced from the war in Europe. That has had a slower growth, in part because there are fewer students that speak Ukrainian than they do speak Spanish in the world. And then we built a global library that's meant as a centralized aggregate library in order to deal with different languages. We've done that in 6 different languages just in order to test them out in different parts of the world, different continents. And we are now in conversations with Amazon in order to scale this thing up so we can make 50 libraries, each one dedicated to different languages for the world, especially for non-colonial based languages. The step that we're at right now is then to establish and build a network in order to be able to facilitate the editing of the content that we've created. So while we can get to 90% perfection, that last 10% is important in order to be able to have the native speakers coming in order to do that. And the key component that we have here is that the wiki-based infrastructure of our libraries is the best technology for large-scale collaborative construction efforts. Think of Wikipedia. Basically, that's underlying our code, so we can actually establish networks or capitalize on networks in order to take the framework that the machine translation has and then move it up into the let's say infinitely best translation effort that's out there. So we're doing that. We're working in collaboration again with Amazon. NICE CX1 is the technology that hosts our libraries, and this was initially funded from the U.S. Department of Education. And that's the end of that. I hope I got the 5 minutes that I was supposed to present on.
Yes, you've got 42 seconds left.
Yeah. I'm very excited about this effort. As machine translation advances, which is coupled to AI, we're then able to have better quality efforts. And then what we've done when we update it, we can pass that back to machine translation technologies in order to improve the model so it actually becomes bigger. So this is our scope in this approach, and we will do this also for the question infrastructures in ADAPT, so that it could be a polyglot homework infrastructure. So that's what I wanted to present.
Thank you so much. Really inspiring. We're getting a lot of great questions and comments here. I'm going to squeeze in one short question and then we'll turn to the next speakers. Jennifer asks, in terms of the network of native speakers, is that a volunteer-based or compensated network?
Right now it's in its infancy, and we don't have an infrastructure in place in order to financially support that. And so we're looking for partners in order to facilitate that. So right now it's volunteer based that's out there, or facilitating local OER efforts that want to be able to capitalize on, like what Mustafa mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yep, good job.
Thank you for presenting that. And actually, this is a great segue to our next speaker, who also does a lot of tremendous translation work, human, not machine. So I want to introduce Nicholas Simon, who's going to present on OER as a social justice tool and the case of digital accessibility. Nicholas is the Associate Professor of Sociology at the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, Criminology, and Social Work at Eastern Connecticut State University, and also a wonderful partner in translating our CC certificate course content into French. So, Nicholas, thank you. Over to you.
You are welcome. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with you today. So, oops, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Today, I would like to talk about OER are good ideas. When people think about OER, most of the time they are thinking of free books. People are thinking of all the students who have access to the course material. People think of OER in terms of access and economic inclusion. They are also thinking of transforming the material to make it relevant to their audience and to include the voice of the voiceless. People think of OER in terms of cultural inclusion. Concretely, when we think about OER, we think about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would like to invite us to think about ideas. OER are good ideas. OER promote inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and social justice. When we think of accessibility on college campus, we think about accommodation. We modify instruction to meet a specific and unique need of a student that we can do ahead of time. This is fundamental to student success. In addition, we can use and we should use universal design to design curricula that can be used and understood by everyone. We can use universal design to eliminate barriers in the learning environment to create learning experiences that are accessible to all people, regardless of their differences. So this is how I try to use universal design in my courses. In my courses, I use open educational resources and I use Blackboard, a learning management system. I was surprised by red and orange icons that you can see on the picture. So I asked to CIT and they explained that my documents were not accessible. So I asked to the Office of Accessibility at Eastern Connecticut State University, my institution, and they taught me how to fix the problem. And it was a terrific collaboration between CIT and OES. Based on their support, I was able to make the course content accessible, to include audio files for audio learner and a Braille file. I do not have any students who need the Braille file, but based on our conversation in class and by seeing week after week the course material in different formats, students become more sensitive to digital accessibility. They also become more sensitive to their own learning style and to the learning style of others. I also show my students how to use free online text-to-read website in which the website read the text to students. And this is only an example. You have many different sites, but I just pick this one. Students can follow the text and the website read to them. This option helps students who are at the same time audio and visual learn. Now, I will not be able to do that with commercial materials because I cannot legally put a digital copy of the commercial material in Blackboard. And when I talk about my work, my friends and my colleagues mention that it is lots of work. And yes, it is, but I am extremely lucky because I have a wonderful teaching assistant which helped me in this journey. I will not be able to do anything without them. So at first I was satisfied, then I was bothered because I was really bothered and disturbed by the idea of reinforcing a culture of consumption. I was inviting my students to consume accessibility. And in my mind, it's better to promote an active and engaged culture which support accessibility by all and for all, especially created by all. So I decided to teach my students how to make a Word document accessible. I taught them in class. I provided them a step-by-step booklet on how to make a Word document digitally accessible. And during the midterm exam, in addition of testing them on course content, I asked them to remediate, to repair a Word document which has accessibility concerns. Root of deep collaboration with CIT and the Office of Accessibility at Eastern. Now I'm on the next step, and I will this semester and in future semester ask my students to make their final paper accessible. I will of course teach them how to do it and create a step-by-step booklet to help them in their digital accessibility journey. It will help them to develop their civic engagement skill and important liberal art skills, because in my institution at Eastern, we provide a liberal art education practically applied. It will also help them to develop a professional skill, because accessibility is fundamental. Many of our students will need this knowledge to use in their work in the future. And of course, I hope that it will promote an active culture, a culture of creation, instead of a passive culture and a culture of consumption. Democracy is not a commodity. Democracy cannot be consumed. The democratic system requires people to be active. This is why OER are good ideas, and OER promote social justice. And I respected the time, and it would be my pleasure to answer your question.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation that really embodies what we mean by open in open education. So thank you for that. Does anyone have a question for Nicholas?
I have a quick comments really, and I think that's Nicholas, this is really an excellent idea, quite frankly, to start getting student involving student in issue of really JEDI, you know, justice, equity, and all those things. And particularly where I'm sitting now at a historically Black college and university and a PhD program with more than 50 students, I am definitely, you know, I mean, this is going to be really a lightning for me, your lightning talk, because I'm going to start getting my student involved in when they submit a paper, when we have a doctoral dissertation that we need to publish somehow, at least really to raise that awareness, really. That's an excellent idea, and thank you for sharing. I would follow up with you as well. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I hope that we'll be in contact, because I'm also a French speaker. And
exactly. Yeah, I share my contact with you on the chat. Please get back with me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I wanted to add this very, very quick, if you don't mind, because with Delmar trying really to get LibreTexts really, you know, translated in French, you know, we're gonna need, quite frankly, all the help that we can get there. So let's talk after all this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, last but not least, we have one speaker left. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Carolyn Stevenson, who's joined us on other occasions for lightning talks in different areas, but today she's going to tell us about getting the balance right, using mindfulness OER for intentional work and life practices. Dr. Carolyn Stevenson is Currently a full-time faculty member and faculty advisor for Purdue University Global, the School of General Education in the Department of Professional Studies, with over 23 years of teaching and administrative experience in higher education at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. She completed her EDD from Roosevelt University, MBA, from Kaplan University, MA in Communications from the Governor's State University, and BA in English from Northern Illinois University. So Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate everyone joining today. And I'm going to actually stop my video because I'm going to be speaking a little bit about mindfulness as well as ways that we can apply OER into our daily practice. And so with that, this presentation is not going to be an all-encompassing of the number of OER that is available in terms of helping create a really strong work balance life. Work balance and self-care have become front and center. And I know after these presentations, I have switched off to actually water instead of caffeine for this, but hearing the presentations and all of us being knowledge seekers, and we get so excited. I just want to take a deep dive, and my mind is racing. It's important to actually take a step back and to really reflect and to ground ourselves so we can continue to remain focused in our work and focused in the mission that we're driving. So this session is going to, again, talk a little bit about mindfulness in OER for fostering that work-life balance. And there's a number of resources that are included in the slides. Again, not all encompassing, but sort of an amuse-bouche or an appetizer to whet the thought of taking a deeper dive into actually spending some time looking at 1-2 minute meditations. It doesn't have to take a long amount of time. It doesn't have to be something that is on a calendar where the notifications come in, but it's something that you choose to do, and it's cost effective in the long run. It really does have a lot of health benefits as well. So the importance of mindfulness is to really fully be present. And it's very hard in our world to listen to presentations and not want to do other things, or our world, the social world, is dynamic. It's constantly in flux. And how do we create that sense of fully being present, aware of what we're learning, aware and reflecting on how we will apply concepts from these lightning sessions into our daily lives, into our work. So the goal of mindfulness is really to wake up that inner workings of our mental, emotional, and physical processes as they all intertwine, interconnect, and flow into the creativity and innovation that we put forth in all of our work. When I think about Nicholas's presentation and that sort of Venn diagram he had up there on really pushing from, passive culture to active creative culture, we can't do that unless we fully are mindful. And so the question thus becomes, how do we become more mindful in our ever-changing world? So being mindful is not at all a substitute for actually participating in our lives and taking care of our own and others' needs. In fact, the more mindful we are, the more skillful and compassionate we can be in our action. And that is from How to Practice Mindfulness from Psychology Today. So it doesn't take a big amount of time. It's a few minutes a day. And I think this visual does provide a realistic expectation on how we can just spend a minute or two, whether it's beginning the day, instead of, I used to wake up, my mind racing with a giant laundry list of tasks that I need to complete. Now I think about what's the non-negotiable, the post-it, the one thing that I want to do effectively. It's much more efficient for ourselves and for others and the work that we do to actually think about doing one or two things fully effective rather than doing a lot of things poorly. And so Meditation 101, again, I am not at all any type of meditation guru. I am a knowledge worker and I'm used to be all over the map, but thinking about just by sitting, closing your eyes, concentrating on your breath, feeling the tension that comes from machine work. It's in our shoulders, our backs, our necks, our hands. Concentrate on that. Allow your mind to just flow. Be aware of yourself. And also, as you start to get into this, again, a few minutes, perhaps it's music. I live in an urban setting in Chicago by a fire department. It is loud, it is noisy, it is a loft. I put on music, very quiet instrumental music to gather my thoughts and to keep me focused and balanced. So there are so many OERs out there that can really help promote these mindfulness exercises and talks. And again, the slide deck will be shared out. I'm not going to show this all through because of the sake of time, but do take a few moments a day and review some of the mindfulness talks that are available. Share it with people in your communities as well. And here is another great, very quick exercise to try as well, really thinking about healthy lifestyles and balance and how that connects back into our work. So 1 minute meditations, a great way to start the day. After I felt so charged up after these lightning sessions, it's good to sort of calm down so I can really reflect on how, we can take the theory, the concepts we've learned from these sessions and fully put it into our lives. But in order to do that, we must, to quote, paraphrase Nell Noddings, in order to help others, we must first help ourselves. So in our rapidly changing and shifting world, and as our mind races, it's important that as we continue to lead the efforts with OER and other forms of our work, to take time just to reflect as well. So thank you all for the few minutes of time today, and I wish you all a really well-balanced day.
What a wonderful reminder. Thank you very much, Carolyn. That was lovely, and also made me realize I was having short breath and holding tension. So thank you. I think we have 1 minute if anybody has a question. I know you are getting a lot of lovely remarks in the chat space, but if anybody has a question, please feel free. All right. Simone is asking, is this a regular event? We host lightning talks about twice a year, depending on the number of speakers who are available and interested. So we will certainly host another one later this year. And I will share information about signing up for our future lightning talks if you want to be a speaker on our open education platform listserv. Thank you all so much for your wonderful presentations, for sharing your expertise. Thank you as audience members for listening and for your support and questions. I want to also note that per Carolyn's idea of spending a little bit of time thinking about how we can apply some of the learning that we've done today and put it into practice. For those of you who are Open Education Platform community members, you have until the 13th of February to propose fundable projects. So if you can think of a translation project that you want to test out with LibreTexts, for example, or if you can think of another opportunity to put some of this great learning to use, please do submit a proposal. That again is only open to Open Education Platform community members, but we would invite collaborations with anyone. All right, we are now at the top of the hour. Again, thank you so much for your time and attention. I will share a recording link with you all in the coming days. Have a great rest of your day or evening.
Where can we find the information about the proposal?
In the Open Education Platform meeting notes and emails.